There are voices of hope that are born on the air, and our land will be free from the clouds of despair. For the brave and the true to battle have gone. In good times, good times, good times are now coming on. You're alone in an iron apartment above the old Marconi butcher, and fine wines of love, the drunk cop on the top floors, passed out at last. So good times, good times, good times are coming to pass. Hurrah, hurrah, hurrah. Sound the blues from the den of the battle that's booming. Hurrah, hurrah, hurrah. Tell the people far and wide that better times are coming. Then a blue innuendo, a stranger on Second Avenue touches your hand and she beckons you some kind of grace at the crook of your elbow. She tells you you're alright, you know. Hurrah, hurrah, hurrah. Shout out for the din of the businessman swooning. Hurrah, hurrah, hurrah. To the people far and wide, the better times are coming.
And that was Janie Barnett from her summer 2017 release, You See This River, with her retreatment of an old Stephen Foster song. Well, that's the only kind there are Stephen Foster songs. Better Times Are Coming. Welcome to the show, Janie.
Thank you so much, Art. It's such a pleasure.
And how did you come to record Better Times Are Coming?
Well, frankly, I went looking online for Stephen Foster since he wrote of a certain era in our history. I thought there must be a song that I can resurrect and I can play with and noodle with that would relate to some of what we're going through right now. And I found a version of this song, Better Times Are Coming, really the original song intact, done by the McGarrigles and some of their offspring. And it inspired me because, of course, everything the McGarrigles do inspires me as well. And I thought to just reposition the lyrics in a new musical setting. And so I ended up with the first verse and chorus. And then I kind of found a way to take those themes of kind of going into battle and survival and some kind of hope for the future, going forward in some of the new lyrics.
Wonderful. And it's been, I think, 20 years since your debut recording. And what does You See This River mean to you as your work of art?
That's a perfect way to phrase that question. I had those 20 years were part of my sort of rediscovering myself and my artistry. I raised a child. I did a lot of work in the New York area as a chameleon, and kind of expressed my skills in that world, and with just a high level of musicianship in the community that I was working in. But during that time of kind of working that way and raising my child, I sort of found myself moving slowly but steadily back towards my roots as an Americana and folk artist, and retrieving those elements of my life, and also just kind of learning as I raised my child, and I grew up myself while I was raising her, that I had something new to say, and I had a new way to say it with the kinds of textures that I worked on in this album. And I have to say that it feels like the sounds particularly are sounds that have been kind of swirling in my head for these decades, and I just needed to find the right environment to sort of spend time alone in my own studio capturing them. Yeah.
And you certainly did well with the help of a great cast of characters, including three friends of mine, the amazing Kenny Vaughan from Marty Stewart's band, one of the great guitarists of our time, Carmela Ramsey on fiddle. I haven't seen her in years. I guess she was with Patty Loveless last time I saw her, and that wonderful songwriter Mark Samus.
Oh, you know Mark. Yes. Well, Kenny and Carmela I met in Brooklyn because Carmela came up for a job and spent, a good over almost 2 years up here working, and we became great friends here in Brooklyn. And in fact, when Carmela and Kenny agreed to work on that track, they seemed like the perfect people to do it. Carmela is such a real, she's the real deal as a fiddler. I headed down to Nashville to work so we could all work together, and I got kind of stranded on the tarmac halfway down where there was an active shooter. I don't know if you remember the active shooting scenario in Fort Lauderdale a few months back.
Oh,
yeah. And I was stranded there, so we did the track with them in the studio and me on FaceTime on the floor of the airport.
Yeah.
So it was a labor of love for all of us in that time. Yeah.
Indeed. Well, talking about active shooting, why don't you tell us about the song we're about to hear, By That Thing?
I'd be happy to. So I'm from Virginia. That's where I was born and raised. And we have a situation in Virginia, for better or for worse, and in my opinion for a little bit of worse, where we have the gun show loophole alive and well, where, any kid or any nutty person can buy a gun now. And I don't particularly have a thing against guns, but I do have a thing about people who maybe are not steady enough to be owning guns, being able to walk off without them with no checks. So this song came about because there was a film I saw, a short film about a youngster who was probably no more than 15, and he went into a convenience store and tried to buy a lotto ticket, and he was refused because he was too young, and he tried to buy a porn, and he was refused in another store, and then he tried to buy vodka in a package store and was refused, and then he went to a gun show, and without many questions asked, he left with his gun. And that is how this song came about.
Quicker than gin. Don't want my driver's license, don't want my name. You want a story, I got plenty to say. You want my money now, I got my thing. You want my money now, I got my thing. Meet my girl up very clean. Out Richmond Highway, I can walk with this thing today. Don't want my driver's license, don't want my name. You want a story, I got plenty to say. You want my money now, I got my thing. You want my money now, I got my thing. It's just business. He don't care since I look okay. He don't care since I accent. Oh, but end up gonna rock away. Don't want my driver's license, don't want my name. You want a story, I got plenty to say. You want my money now, I got my thing. You want my money now, I got my thing. I got my
And that was Buy That Thing by Janie Barnett from her new album, You See This River. And we have Janie as our interviewed guest today on The Revolution Starts Now, the topical song show on your community radio station, WCOM. Janie, you were talking earlier about your folk Americana roots, and seems like we sort of grew up parallel in two neighboring states. And we have a mutual friend in the late John Hartford. What influence did John have you as a developing artist?
So I met John when I was really a kid working at the American Folklife Festival in D.C. My friend's mother was the person who really created that event, and through the years we would go down and we would work the event and we would meet all the artists. And you know, when I met John sort of in the canteen, I just took one look at him and I was like, this is the real deal. This is a real musician who just lives it all to the fullest. And I just would go to every stage he would play and every little workshop he would do, and then I followed his career and just asked him ridiculous questions, I'm sure, as a teenager, and just watched his hands and watched his spirit, and also because John, you know, I think we were calling it newgrass at the time, not Americana, but just took those root sounds and he just did whatever the hell he wanted with them, and to me that was just the ultimate inspiring kind of choice as an artist, to not just hold on to your roots, but to try and move those sounds forward in some inspiring way that would really enrich people in a new way, not just honor the old, but create something new.
Very true. As you were saying that, it reminds me of a poster I have from college days somewhere in the barn. It says, Doc Watson, he plays guitar. John Hartford, he plays havoc, $3.
Oh my! You're gonna have to take a picture of that and send it to me. I've got to have that. Wow!
Next time I run across it, I'll do that. You've over the last couple of decades seems to have made your way in the music world in every possible manner. Folks might be interested in hearing a bit of what you've done all the way from commercials to teaching at Berkeley.
You know, I kind of fell into commercials. I went from the New England folk scene to New York. I was in a creative project, but some of my musician friends and sort of my musician family who had moved to New York also fell into the commercial world, really as a way to, you know, supplement their art. And what we found was we were able to walk in, exercise our skills, and leave, and it was kind of a refreshing change from the music business, where there was sort of one tangled web after another, if you will. And in the commercial world, you could go in, sing and play with people you respected, and get a yes or a no and leave. And it did support independent music, and I think in some ways for us here, it helped to launch independent music where you were not beholden to people in the large companies, and you could make your own records and finance your own records in a way. And I worked with some really, really, you know, amazing skilled musicians. I also worked with some interesting artists. You know, the Buckwheat Zydeco, who I used to see at the American Folklife Festival as a kid, ended up in, you know, one of the sessions I was in New York, and that interesting. Dr. John and certain artists who also found that, you know, they could supplement their artist lives by working in the commercial world, and that was kind of fascinating. Over time, I always taught. I was a teacher of my friends and little kids when I was in high school, and I always kind of weaved some teaching and mentoring through all my artist life and my commercial life. And when a job opened up at Berkeley, which was a part-time job, and that was wonderful, I jumped at the chance. And my work at Berkeley has been really over 10 years now, mentoring young singer-songwriters, and it's how I met Mark Simos, and we wrote the song together. My colleagues there are all so gifted, and for the most part, the students are very inspiring. And you know what, Art, I get to share what I've learned that you can do the right way, and I also get to share with them what not to do, and how you can mess things up a little bit along the way. So that's been a pleasure.
Indeed, it must have been. Let's hear one more song here before I'll let you go today, and it is certainly a topical song and something on our mind. Tell the folks about Face the Voodoo, and then we'll hear that.
Okay. So Face the Voodoo started because of a political satire that some of your listeners might have viewed last summer during the political campaign. It was called Brain Dead, and the premise was that an alien asteroid came down to Earth, and all these bugs were unleashed on the nation's capital, where I grew up, and they kind of hung out in the cherry blossoms, and then they invaded the brains of all the senators. And, you know, as I like to say, it was oddly plausible that all the senators were acting insane. And it was also during that time that we were moving towards the conventions, and I don't know, in my camp there was still a lot of infighting about who played fair and who didn't, and I thought a lot about the absurdity that we found ourselves in, and the sore losers and the sore winners and the bullies. And so this song came out of it. So a lot of people think this is me writing about an alcoholic that in my life and telling them to shape up, but in fact it's just disguised in that way, and it's not about that at all. It's really about, you know, our political activity and how we need to kind of wake up and just deal with the trauma that we've all experienced in one way or another.
And that was Face the Voodoo by Janie Barnett from her new album, You See This River. We've had the pleasure of having Janie as our guest today on The Revolution Starts Now. Janie, are you going to be performing any in support of the album?
I hope to set up a good tour this coming year. I'm working on things right now. I've gotten as far as as talking to the Birchmere in Virginia. I haven't gotten farther south than that, but I hope to get farther south, and if I do, I hope you'll let me pay you a visit.
Yes, that would be wonderful to have you here in Chapel Hill. Great. So how can folks find out more about your music and get a copy of You See This River?
Well, thank you for asking. So, of course, we have a website for myself and Blue Room, my collaborative group. You certainly can go to JanieBarnett.com, and you'll find everything. And right on that first page, you'll find a way to order directly from us as independent artists through PayPal. And, of course, you can go to CD Baby and find us. You can listen on Spotify and check it out before you go. And of course, the other digital platforms, iTunes and Amazon. And I certainly love to hear from people. There'll be an email address on my homepage. And anyone who would love to write me, I love to talk to people out there who are music lovers and who certainly are lovers of your show, considering the theme.
Last night's fun, still in your hair. You don't really care, do you? What happens if the stuff in your head falls out of your ear, falls under the bed? Sleeping with the TV roller, feet on the table, head on the floor. Books growing in the flower pot, doing punches, it's good. Get up, get up, get up, you. There's a hard ball smack down Garden Avenue. Get up, you. Trying to face the voodoo. Trying to face the voodoo. So you didn't get your way over on a picking day. You think you got cheated, just scared me, just scared me. Eat a little pie, coffee, stop being the baby, stop being the baby, stop being the baby. Get up, you. There's a horn ball smack down Garden Avenue. Get up, you. Time to face the voodoo. Time to face the voodoo. What happens if the stuff in your head blows at you, blows under the bed? Call me whenever you think you got your head screwed on straight. I will always love you, but you cannot call me until that day. Get up, you. Get up, you.
All right, that's JanieBarnett.com. Thanks so much for being with us today on The Revolution Starts Now, Janie.
Thank you so much, Ari. It's really been a pleasure.
We're